Hello friends, Jenkins Dota here, bringing you another Dota 2 video on behalf of Pvgna.com, and this is going to be part of the drafting video series. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about flex picks and how they fit into a draft in Dota 2. So to begin, what are flex picks? Flex picks are heroes that can be picked in the current meta that can be played in 2 or more roles effectively. So 2 really great examples of these types of heroes is Puck and then Razor. Puck is a great flex pick because Puck can be played as an offlaner, as a solo safe laner, and as a mid laner. So you got 3 possible scenarios where you could lane Puck in a game of Dota 2. Razor can be basically put as a solo safe laner. He can be put as a carry who's in a tri lane. He can be put as a mid kind of tempo controller lane winner. So he kind of also has 3 laning scenarios that you can throw him to, and he's going to be effective. So you're not really locked into any particular laning setup if you pick these heroes. So why does it actually matter? Why do you want to have these heroes available to you in Captain's Mode and in pubs for that matter? So in Dota 2, there's 5 roles. There's the 5, which is the safe lane support. There's the 4, which is the roaming support. There's the 3, which is the suicide lane core. There's the 2, which is the mid core, sometimes a tempo controller, mostly leaning towards being a semi-carry these days. And then there's the 1, which is the insurance policy hero. Typically a hard carry hero, a core role hero that just gets all the farm, carries the game in the late game. The numbers associated with each role typically refers to the farm priority given to that hero. That is, if the offlaner and the carry show up in the same lane for a team fight, the offlaner is usually going to leave after the team fight happens and give the safe farm to the carry, because the carry is the 1 and the offlaner is the 3. The numbers, conveniently, can also be associated with in which order you're comfortable with your heroes getting countered in the drafting phase. That is, you'd much rather the enemy team counterpick your 5 role than your 1 role. You can think of it somewhat like the stock market. You're investing a lot into your 1 role in terms of providing them space, time, and sacrificing yourself to provide them farm on the map. But you're not investing a lot into your 5 role. In fact, 5 roles are typically given little to no farm priority at all, and sometimes they're even intentionally sacrificed right at the start of a fight just so they can soak spells. So, for comparison, if you had to invest your life savings into one thing, and you had to invest $10 into another thing, they have to be distinct, what would you invest in? You'd probably invest your life savings into the least risky stock possible, like Coca-Cola. That company's been around for 100 years. But you might be willing to invest that $10 into a very risky startup because it's only $10. You want to go big, you know? This is the same relationship between the roles in Dota. You're investing way more into your cores, so you want them to have the least risk of getting countered possible, so you have the least risk of losing the game possible. Because Captain's Mode, and all pick for that matter, is relatively balanced in terms of when you pick, you're sometimes going to have to pick cores and give the enemy team a chance to hard counter them. A lot of the time, a single pick can make a hero completely useless in a game of Dota 2. And if a hero is part of your win condition and they're hard countered, then the chances of you winning is very minimal. For example, if a draft rides on the single fact that a Storm Spirit hero is unkillable in the late game and the enemy team picks an anti-mage, that draft is basically screwed because that's exactly when anti-mage counters Storm Spirit. So you cannot pick Storm Spirit in that scenario because you're risking that anti-mage counter pick. This is the main reason for flex picks. They basically fit into those draft spots where you have to reveal a hero that may possibly be a core in the game. Usually it's after you've picked 2 heroes. Flex picks are going to be those heroes that they might be cores, they might be supports, but if you do get countered, you're still able to swap them into a situation where it's not that big of a deal. And even if the enemy team does counter them, what if they're countering your offlaner? They don't know if they're countering a mid laner, they don't know if they're countering a safe laner. Some heroes, like we were saying with the Coca-Cola stock analogy, you want to counter what the enemy team is investing the most into. So if you do end up hard countering a Razor, for example, the Razor is thrown into the mid lane, and then you pick another safe laner that can completely crush that safe lane and carry the game, you hurt your draft. You can prey on people that want to counter these flex picks. So basically, the less the enemy team knows, the better, because they can't just counterpick a flex pick and stop you from having a win condition. In fact, they won't even be sure what your win condition is. If they think they're sure, then you can prey on that by throwing the flex picks into atypical roles and baiting easily counterable heroes and counterpicking those counter picks. For example, if they counter a puck really hard and you picked a puck, then you can throw the puck into the off lane, say screw it puck, you just go get what you can, and then the Shadow Fiend that you pick next is completely uncountered and is going to destroy the middle lane matchup. However, imagine the same scenario, but you pick a Shadow Fiend where you pick that puck. You pick a Shadow Fiend early in the draft. Well, guess what? The enemy team's going to pick a TA in response. All of a sudden, you have an SF laning against a TA. The SF gets completely screwed. You don't have an SF mid, basically, because he's feeding so hard. And it's all because of the order in which you pick these heroes. And because SF is not a flex pick. He's always going to the middle lane. Puck, you're not sure. So the enemy team can't necessarily counter if they see a puck, if they see a flex pick. And if they do, you can flex it. You can move it. Okay, so how does this actually fit into pubs now that we know what flex picks actually are? For me, I personally keep a list of heroes in the off lane that I like to play that I feel really comfortable with. In the current patch, it always changes. And I separate this list into categories. In particular, the categories that I separate the list into are the exact categories in which I'm talking about for the series. So for flex picks, I reserve these picks for when I'm not entirely sure what roles my team wants to play. So if nobody's highlighting lanes, people are fighting, I'll pick a Tiny, for example, and say, okay, guys, I'll take whatever lane, just pick your heroes, I'll take whatever lane, and that way, if somebody takes the off lane from me, the game will still go okay because I can go to the safe lane. Another great situation to utilize a flex pick is if my team is highlighting some heroes that are kind of instant wins if they're not countered, like a Broodmother or Chaos Knight. I'll give them the later pick by picking a hero that's flexible, like Tiny or Puck, and then I can switch up the lanes and roles to accommodate for that cheesy kind of hero pick and give them the best lane possible. So I can go to the safe lane if it looks like we want to aggro tri-lane or something like that, and I'll be fine because I'm a Tiny. So this would just not be possible without flex picks, and that's exactly what I use them for in pubs. The latter of the two scenarios is exactly how it works in Captain's mode as well. You may pick a Tiny, and they respond with a Nakes to counterpick that, but then you can throw the Tiny into the safe lane, pick a Razor, which is an extremely hard counter to Nakes, and throw the Razor in the off lane as well. What is a Lifestealer going to do against a Razor? He's going to get sucked dry. There's nothing a Lifestealer can do against that Razor, and Tiny, he'll do fine in the safe lane. It's a Tiny, he's a flex pick. Without flex picks, your lanes become predictable, which means the enemy team does not have to fear their heroes being counterpicked, but they can still counterpick you. This basically forces you into a scenario where the enemy team can counter you without having to worry about getting countered themselves. So you're just going to have a much lower win chance by virtue of simply the draft. For this reason, almost every tier 1 team these days, they draft flex picks in the second, third, and sometimes fourth. Obviously, it rotates depending. You'll maybe pick a second and then a fourth flex pick, but there's always flex picks in between those second, third, and fourth pick slots in the draft. And pubs are beginning to mirror this behavior as well. And I think that if you get ahead of the curve and you start doing this, you can gain a lot of free MMR by picking these flex picks, not allowing yourself to get countered, and you're going to have a much higher chance of winning all of your pubs.